So the best explanation design argument says the best explanation for the complexity that exists in the universe is an intelligent designer. And at the time, it may have seemed perfectly reasonable. There are two possibilities, randomness or designer, and randomness just seems far less likely. But in 1859, things changed. In 1859, Darwin published his Origins of the Species. In it, he described the idea that children inherit traits from their parents, and those traits that are beneficial to survival were carried on into future generations, and those traits that hindered survival were selected out for. They were eliminated. So the theory of evolution is that, in fact, we have had random mutations over the course of millennia that have resulted in our increased possibility for survival. Combine that with notions like the Big Bang, and we get this notion that things started out very, very simply, and they evolved into the complex things that they are. The story is that 14 billion years ago, particles collided and caused the Big Bang. 4 billion years ago, a rock hit another rock. The second rock was Earth. That first rock, or what we call meteor, caused the combination of things that resulted in proteins, amino acids, DNA being formed, and organisms eventually evolved. At first, probably just single-celled organisms, and then one day multi-celled organisms. And they're all just existing in the primordial ooze. And over the course of millions of years, those organisms became more and more complex. And one day, some freak was born that had legs, and that thing was able to climb out of the water and live on land. And they continued and continued and continued to evolve, so that 4 billion years later, here we are on this planet with complex organisms everywhere in a complex universe. But the universe didn't start off like that. It started off simple. So evolution showed that things started out much simpler and they evolved into more complex things. Well, the evolution objection uses that idea, that theory of evolution, and says, well, if things started out less complicatedly, then the chances of them coming about randomly are greatly increased. Consider this, okay? Look back at the argument. The argument says the best explanation of apparent design. Well, in the 18th century, the best explanation was being chosen probably between randomness and a designer. We don't have any problem understanding how between randomness and a designer, the designer seems like the more reasonable explanation. But now we have a third option. It's not just randomness and design. Now, evolution is a third option. So if we're looking at randomness, designer, or evolution, Which of those three is the best explanation? At the very least, we can say evolution and a designer are neck and neck. It's 50-50. Which one of those is going to be the case? Okay, 49-49. We'll give 2% to the randomness theory. So, at best, evolution and a designer are neck and neck. At worst, for the best explanation design argument, evolution is a far better explanation than a supernatural designer. Which means that second premise of the best explanation design argument is not true. The best explanation is not a designer, and as a result, it's not probable that God exists and designed the universe. Does that make sense?